I'm just going to get started and first say thank you for being here. My name is Corey Clemmer. I am the Director of Engagement at Domini Impact Investments. We're a woman-led investment advisory firm with over 30 years of experience investing for good. Here, I know it's Climate Week and there's a lot going on, and I appreciate that you chose to be here. And if you're watching this recorded later on, I appreciate your time also. And I want to thank our panelists for being here. Before we get into our presentations, I want to just address the elephant in the room and recognize it's still 2020 and it's been a tough year so far. The world has been turned on its head in so many ways, and it can be a little hard to see when and how we're going to turn a corner. But this kind of disruption is precedent to change, right? It's only when we have these moments, I think, that the significant change is possible. And it's an invitation to grow for all of us to become a better version of ourselves and to find alignment. And I can't really think of a better example than how we relate to forests. At a global level, we're very concerned with carbon emissions, and we're researching all kinds of technologies for carbon capture and sequestration. But we know that there's a tool that works really well for capturing carbon and storing it, and that's the forest. But we still eat and invest in byproducts that destroy the forests. And then at the very local level, we also know that trees are very important. People pay a premium to live in communities with more green spaces. If there's anything that 7 months of a COVID lockdown has taught me, it's how much I appreciate the trees I can see out of my window in my apartment and being around nature. And research has confirmed that trees are good for us. Being in the forest is good for us. The Japanese have called it forest bathing, but now there's a lot of research that shows that just being around and in the forest can reduce depression, fatigue, anxiety, and confusion, so many of the things that plague our society today. So at a global level and at a deeply personal level, we know how important the forests are, but we seem to be stuck somewhere in between with all these bad habits. As consumers, companies, investors, we're all stuck in this system that seems intent on destroying the forest. So no matter how much intuitively we know it's wrong, and empirically we can see how wrong it is, we haven't been able to get out of this paradigm. We fundamentally can recognize that a tree is worth more alive than dead, but we haven't found that alignment in our actions and behavior yet. At Domini, we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to build that alignment into our investment strategy and into the field of finance more broadly, and we have a lot of work going on that front. But I'm much more excited to talk today to you about the panelists we have here, and they're going to give us leading insights both at that global level and then at that from the very front lines of fighting to protect the Amazon. So first, I'd like to introduce Victor Galaz, who is the Deputy Director at the Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University. They do cutting-edge research on Earth's climate's tipping points, and they'll show how interconnected our global systems are. And we'll also hear from Thomas Pizer, who is the founder and president of Aqua Verde, an NGO that supports indigenous peoples in their fight to protect their cultures and the forest. And our guest of honor, who we have our translator here, and I hope he is on the line, Chief Almir Narayamoga Surui from the Paiter-Surui tribe in the Amazon. And he has been really on the front lines protecting the forest, his tribe's territory, patrolling the land to prevent illegal fires, logging, mining, and actually planting trees. So very excited to have you all here and to have this conversation. I'm going to come to you, Victor, and ask just to hear a bit about what you're doing at the center and what kind of science this is, what are you studying, and what are you finding?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll be happy to kick this off. The Stockholm Resilience Center is a multidisciplinary research center based at Stockholm University with very close collaborations with the Swedish Academy of Sciences, where we have several research programs. I would say we're about 100 scientists from all over the world, of course, based in Stockholm, various disciplines, all the way from computer scientists to ecologists, political science. And I think our passion is to work together and help provide best available knowledge to help us navigate this turbulent future. So we do basic research, we educate students, and we engage with change agents in society. And part of the work has been linked to the Amazon and financial flows to the Amazon.
Amazing. So can you tell us a bit about the tipping elements and with respect to the forest in particular, but also more generally?
Yes, of course. So this was work that we started a couple of years ago, myself with Beatrice Crona, my colleague, and I think we were interested in figuring out how finance connects to abrupt climate change. So not just climate change in general or carbon emissions, but something called tipping elements in the climate system. And tipping elements in the climate systems are, a little bit simplified, are parts of biomes in the Earth system that once you tip them through human activities, they could tip over and lead to accelerating climate change in a simplified way. Some of these tipping elements are related, for example, to the Arctic and West Antarctica, so sea ice, and some of them are related to forests, especially very big forests. So two known forest tipping elements, one of them is the Amazon, and the other one are boreal forests, so in Russia and Canada. So these two forests, through different dynamics, play a role by help stabilizing the climate system. So through human activities, you can push them to a point where they would tip, and suddenly going from being our friends in the climate system to actually help accelerate climate change.
Wow, so can you just say a little more about how that works? You're saying if we, hit a point, then the forest becomes an accelerant of climate change rather than holding us back from the edge.
Yeah, I mean, again, in a simplified matter, and if we talk about the Amazon, because the Amazon and boreal forests have different dynamics, but modeling studies have shown, and there's quite other good evidence that, of course, the Amazon is a rainforest. So for the Amazon to be able to stay as a rainforest, it needs precipitation, and that means that once you start deforesting at the same time as you see climate change, the Amazon starts to dry up, and once it becomes drier, you see more forest fires, they become more extensive, and suddenly the Amazon is not able to maintain itself in a rainforest state, and slowly but very, very surely tips into become a savanna. Once it does that, and this is not a fast process, and we don't know exactly where that tipping point is, you would lose massive, massive amounts of carbon, of course, biodiversity, precipitation, not only in the region, not only in the Amazon, but in the whole region, and with big, big impacts on human well-being, clearly. And exactly where that tipping point is discussed, is debated, it's been modeled, it's been proposed, but assuming that we would be able to stay within the Paris 2-degree agreement, the models and the estimates are that the Amazon can cope with 25% deforestation before it starts to tip compared to pre-industrial times. And we're currently at 17% is the estimate. So we're getting closer to that tipping point.
And perhaps, Tomas, you can let us know a bit about what's been going on there, and maybe just give us a little picture into what it's like right now with the pandemic and how they've been facing those challenges.
Yes, good morning to all. My name is Thomas Pizer. I'm president and founder of an association based in Switzerland, who has been since 2002 helping indigenous people in Brazil to protect and try to save their parts of the Amazon forest. We've been helping them mainly with reforestation projects. In Brazil, tribes have been given back land and have the use of it in an indigenous way. They can't make it, industrialize it, but they can use it for their own needs as they want. So each tribe has its own forest. The Surui people they've had their first contact with our society, with our civilization 50 years ago. And that means in 1969. And then in the 80s, beginning of the 80s, they were given back quite some land. It's about 250,000 hectares. And it was it is today actually still 90% covered with forest, with a native forest that has been untouched because they've managed to protect it until now. When there was the contact, this tribe, the Surui tribe, they went through really a drastic time because within 3 years, they lost most of their tribe. They nearly went extinct. They passed from over 5,000 people to less than 300 in the beginning of the 70s. Today there are 1,500 about. They have managed to survive as a tribe. This year has been particularly terrible for the Surui people. Well, since last year, you know, and since the new government came to power, they've had a lot of trouble because there was a sort of impunity for the deforesters and illegal miners who increased the pressure on the tribe in trying to protect itself. Then when the COVID arrived in the beginning, since it arrived first in Europe before Brazil, so we tried to warn them as much and prepare as much as we could to help them. In the beginning, they really managed to close their territory. So in the beginning it was okay, but as time went on, they got into more trouble. And they are having also a hard time going to the hospital because actually the town of Cacoal, which is this one hour away from their land, is actually heavily infected too. So they take a big risk whenever they go.
But well, this must make the work that they do so much more difficult. I know that there's so much of what they do is to physically protect the territory from illegal fires, mining, logging, cattle grazing, all of that. And so if your movement is restricted, that must be a lot, much more difficult. Can you tell us a little bit about how they've protected the forest in that way and how that has gone?
They have teams of indigenous people who patrol the land, the forest, and they note everything that is going down. It's very difficult for them. In the past, they've been used to stop deforesters, to catch them and to hand them over to the police. But it's really something that leads to a lot of conflict between the local population and the indigenous people. So now they patrol, they look at what's happening, they take pictures, they film as much as they can, and then they denounce it to the federal police in Brazil. They've had local police is not very effective, but federal police and the IBAMA, and yields little result. So we've tried with the association Aqua Verde also to promote and to help them create a cooperative for products from the forests that are generated without destroying the trees. And an example is collecting Brazil nuts, which are of high value on the market, and making a business out of it. So it will any microeconomy that they will get will help them also protect their land. Raise reforestation projects, on the other hand, have been very useful to Chief Almir to show his tribe that it needs to unite to protect the forest. And for this, reforestation is very efficient. Over the last 17 years, they've planted over 500,000 trees to reforest, and they did it along their own principles. They have it's not just for yielding. I mean, it's all trees that won't be cut again, of course. It's not for wood production, but they can use it for fruits. They can use products for medicine, for making arts and crafts, using seeds, and also for wildlife to come back, like monkeys, which need particular trees, and they've planted some trees just for that. And monkeys are coming back.
So just for dramatic effect, I will just very quickly share this image, which is this is the territory of the Paiter-Surui, and you can see this is their territorial boundary and how much they have protected from the development that's happened around. It's really incredible.
What you see on the northeast, which is also green, is other tribes. Here you have 5 tribes in that area, actually, in that greener area. You have also another tribe right on your left there, which is the Uruiwawao tribe, which is on the border with Bolivia. And imagine they have over 2 million hectares, and they're trying to protect, and that tribe is only 170 people. So it's very difficult for them to protect it. The Ministry of Environment has special forces also, so once in a while they get some support.
I think you said a statistic when we spoke earlier. It's something like 90% of their land they've effectively protected 90% of their land over the last 50 years.
Yeah, exactly, but so that is a great achievement. The tribes, I mean, they are not the only tribe doing this. Tribes who are trying to really protect their land do have a certain amount of success, but it's really a constant pressure. And so they're trying. Chief Almir is trying to answer also different aspects of the life of the tribe. Of course, when you have diamond mining, it's very tough to compete with that, with reforestation, which is hard work and costs, and yields little result. So we've tried with the association Aqua Verde also to promote and to help them create a cooperative for products from the forests that are generated without destroying the trees. And an example is collecting Brazil nuts, which are of high value on the market, and making a business out of it. So it will any microeconomy that they will get will help them also protect their land, raise. Reforestation projects, on the other hand, have been very useful to Chief Almir to show his tribe that it needs to unite to protect the forest, and for this reforestation is very efficient. Over the last 17 years, they've planted over 500,000 trees to reforest, and they did it along their own principles. They have it's not just for yielding. I mean, it's all trees that won't be cut again, of course. It's not for wood production, but they can use it for fruits. They can use products for medicine, for making arts and crafts, using seeds, and also for wildlife to come back, like monkeys, which need particular trees, and they've planted some trees just for that. And monkeys are coming back.
So just for dramatic effect, I will just very quickly share this image, which is this is the territory of the Paiter-Surui, and you can see this is their territorial boundary and how much they have protected from the development that's happened around. It's really incredible.
What you see on the northeast, which is also green, is other tribes. Here you have 5 tribes in that area, actually, in that greener area. You have also another tribe right on your left there, which is the Uruiwawao tribe, which is on the border with Bolivia. And imagine they have over 2 million hectares, and they're trying to protect, and that tribe is only 170 people. So it's very difficult for them to protect it.
Wonderful. Well, we're so glad that you were able to make this work. We're very excited to have you here. Maybe you can just start off by saying, how are you? How is your community doing? How are you faring both in the fire season and in the pandemic, and you know, in this fight to protect the planet?
Certo. Então, obrigado. Peço desculpa pelos problemas aqui, né? A Amazônia é realmente difícil, né? Situações aqui. Então, o povo Paiter-Surui está num enfrentamento de pandemias, né? E nós já perdemos 5 pessoas do nosso povo. E estamos na luta em busca de assistência do governo, né? E mesmo assim, o território do povo Paiter-Surui está com muito problema de desmatamento, né? Porque aí, como sempre falamos, né? O governo atual, né? Do governo brasileiro está incentivando mineradoras, garimpeiros e demais desmatamento da terra indígena no Brasil. E assim, para nós é uma situação muito complicada, né? Porque também nós não temos poder de combater isso se não for fazer a educação ambiental. Nós não temos poder policial para fazer isso. Quem tem poder policial para evitar isso é o governo, e o governo apoia ilegalidade.
Thank you. And we've been talking a bit about finding some alignment. Victor shared some very helpful insights about the interconnection of the whole global climate system and the importance of the forest to the stability of the whole planet. And then we've been also speaking about how you have been on the very front lines defending each forest, each mile of forest to the benefit of all of us. So we're very grateful for that. And would also just invite any of your reflections on what has made that successful and what has made that difficult.
Então, é verdade, né? A gente tem defendido a floresta porque nós acreditamos que o papel da floresta tem grande importância de equilíbrio climática e também ambiental. E dentro do povo Paiter-Surui, a gente tem trabalhado o programa sustentável dentro do território para que a gente possa mostrar que como é possível você desenvolver economicamente junto com a floresta, né? E hoje um dos maiores reflorestamentos na Amazônia, nós, povo Paiter, também desenvolvemos com apoio da Associação Água Verde, né? Aproximadamente, a gente já plantou durante 15 anos, né? Quase 1 milhão mudas, né? Para quê? Para mostrar, né, que como que ser humano também pode ajudar a manter a floresta e essa floresta também produzindo, né? Por exemplo, castanha, né, que nós plantamos já está começando a produzir, né? Cacau, né, que nós plantamos está produzindo já, né? Já está isso para nós é um modelo que a gente defendemos que a floresta é possível você trabalhar com ela, né? E hoje o ser humano, né, não sabe lidar com tudo isso, né? Porque seres humanos são muito imediatistas, né? e assim achar que só floresta derrubada que pode ser visto como desenvolvimento. E a gente tem tentado combater isso levando esse conhecimento tradicionais do povo Paiter, né, através da universidade e tentar o mundo entender que a gente também precisa buscar consciência do consumo, né, e valorizar o produto da floresta.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Did you have more to add?
Desculpa, eu que tinha desligado. Estou falando que com esse trabalho a gente tem tentado avançar para que empresas, políticas públicas tenham compreensão dessa valorização do produto da floresta, né? Porque sem floresta, nós, ser humano, nós não somos nada, né? Como a gente não é nada sem tecnologia, né? Então, isso a gente precisa saber respeitar a floresta, produzir na maneira sustentável e muito importante para que essas empresas tenham essa consciência de levar esse conhecimento para frente, educar seus consumidores, educar sua produção, né, para que a gente saiba que a nossa maneira de lutar não achar que a floresta é intocável, mas a gente precisa saber utilizar o serviço prestado pela essa bondosa floresta. Isso que eu queria dizer para vocês. Obrigado.
Brilliant, thank you. And so now I'm going to try to pull folks back into this conversation. We had started talking about how do we get there, and Victor had mentioned policy and law and enforcement and a bit about financial incentives. Tomas, you've been doing so much work on the ground. Perhaps, Tomas, you could just say a bit about the projects you've been doing with the Paiter-Surui and some of the other tribes.
Yes, okay, I've talked a bit of the projects already that we've been doing. The main one being reforestation. We have to realize that the Surui people and other tribes have been, when they plant in the forests. They re-enrich the forest. It's a very hard work, and it's planted one by one. It's not industrial planting, you know? And the species are chosen by them. I talked a little bit about that, but it's not monoculture. And all culture they do within the Surui is natural. They don't use pesticides. They don't use chemicals. They want to keep as natural as they can, and it's really an impressive work. We work also with 2 other tribes. We're quite a small organization, but we work with the Ashaninka tribe in the state of Acre in Brazil, where we do also have a big reforestation project which started last year and is ongoing. And we have other projects, for example, with the Puyana tribe, another tribe in Acre, which have different problems, issues. Is one regaining land, traditional land, which they've lost in the past because they've been moved from one place to the other as slaves in the early 20th century. So they want to go back to their sacred lands, and they're trying to buy 10,000 hectares land from a private owner, which is actually their sacred lands with all their sacred spirits and things on it, which they will just protect as it is when they can regain it. So you see, project can vary from one tribe to other, but we work with specific tribes who are at the forefront of the protection of the environment and indigenous cultures.
Mm-hmm. And Chief Almir, if you're still there, I'd love to come back to you with a question. I heard what you were saying about about using education, about how companies can do more to educate their consumers and educate their suppliers about sustainable forest practices. And so I wonder if you could just say a bit more. I know that you've also been working on this university to bring more tribes into the process and to share that education. And so I wonder if you could talk a bit about the collaboration you've been doing with some of the other indigenous communities in the Amazon.
Então, a ideia da universidade saiu a partir dessa visão da sustentabilidade, né? Se a gente não valorizar nossa cultura, a gente iria perder esse conhecimento dos nossos ancestrais junto com a floresta. E, portanto, a gente viu que para compartilhar isso, a gente quer fazer isso com responsabilidade. Então, a universidade é uma instância de educação, né? Então, lá vai estar falando da importância da floresta, né? E lá vai também falando do conhecimentos tradicionais do povo indígena e também do não indígena, né? Aonde a gente pode, não estou dizendo também que o nosso conhecimento é perfeito, né? Claro, todo mundo tem falhas, né? Então a gente vamos tirar melhores do conhecimento e juntar para que a gente possa então trabalhar isso dentro do respeito do desenvolvimento sustentável no mundo, né? Então hoje só a universidade está parado por causa de pandemias, né? Mas após pandemias, com certeza nós estaremos lançando edital onde que a gente vamos oferecer essa pós-graduação dentro da universidade àquelas pessoas que têm interesse de buscar esses conhecimentos junto com a floresta.
Thank you so much for that, and I appreciate this opportunity to learn directly from you today. I'm gonna I want to tee up one question. I'm gonna come back to it, but I'm gonna ask everyone for what is giving them optimism. But Victor, so we had started talking about what kind of changes would be necessary to bring about this kind of system level change, and you had spoken a bit about policy and financial incentives, and I know you have some other work you've begun on actually tax havens of all things, but if you could just say a little bit more about how what kind of system shifts you've seen as an opportunity to address some of the problems we're discussing.
Yeah, I mean, one way to summarize thing, and I think that this becomes clear when talking about collaboration with tech companies and satellites and mobiles, is that I don't think the issue is not lack of data anymore, or not even lack of knowledge. It's lack of action. I think that's what's missing at the moment. And of course, the political situation in Brazil is definitely not doing things easier. But the next question is, how can we, like everyone, make sure that we provide space enough for initiatives like this to thrive, not only in for this particular tribe, but for many tribes and other communities. And I think so that's what we need to tackle, and that's where we need action. And I think if you want this to be an alternative for the long term, we need to tackle climate change. I mean, it's a slow driver of change that will undermine resilience across the whole region and for all communities unless we're able to tackle it. The other thing is that tackle drivers of deforestation. I've already mentioned agribusiness, cattle, soy, mining, etc. Get to that and use law, use finance to it, and consumer pressure. I think that's what's needed now. And I see all these things are moving now. Maybe that's what gives me optimism. Consumers are moving, financial people are moving, young people are realizing that these are interesting and important issues. So it is moving, but it's moving very, very slowly. And it is frustrating at times, but it's not a lack of information or knowledge.
Yeah, that has certainly been an obstacle in the past, and it doesn't seem to be quite that way anymore. And feel free, Chief Almir or Tomas, if you want to jump in anywhere, just please feel free to jump in. I'm going to start looking at some of the questions we've gotten. And so we have two from Stephen actually, that I'm going to try to summarize this, Stephen, and you can let me know if I mess this up. But essentially, when you are looking at these drivers of deforestation, there's a question about infrastructure, and that the land grabs happen around where the infrastructure exists. So building the road is what creates an opportunity to then set up an illegal mine and carry stuff out. And it also facilitates kind of intermediaries coming in to maybe illegally take over land or deforest the land, and then they can pass it on to a kind of more reputable and established supplier after that. And so you have these kind of actors in the middle that are doing a lot of the dirty work and then handing it off, and you know, people can kind of claim that they didn't know and they didn't do it themselves. So there's a question then about infrastructure as a driver, and then a follow-up question about the role of the federal forces enforcing these violations, and how a shift in enforcement may invite greater action by illegal actors.
Sure. Yes, it's very difficult even for the tribes to face this, because many times it's poor people from who are sent at the front, you know, and do little by little land grabbing, and who are, you know, when they catch deforesters, it's just poor guys who earn $2 a day, and so they can't really enforce, you know. When they catch them, they hand them over to the police. The people behind them come and get them out of jail in a few hours. It's very difficult also locally to sue people. We actually also, sorry, have a part of what we do is supporting the tribes when they are facing court cases, because they tend to lose them, and the deforesters tend to win them all because there's a lot of money behind it, and a lot of corruption. So it's very, very difficult for them. And it's always, you know, the ones that they can reach are often the wrong ones. I mean, the ones that have no power. It's much larger companies and so on who are behind that. So this is very difficult for the Pizer-Surui and others as well. Federal police is obliged to intervene when there is when there's denunciations, which they do. But what it often creates is more tension locally between the white people and the indigenous people. So that's where, when you have big operations from the federal police, that's where the indigenous people get the most threats on their lives, not only Chief Almir's, but other one as well. So this creates a climate of high tension. We've seen that last year with the fires, with the police interventions, which makes everything, it makes it very difficult to protect. But as Almir said earlier, also really there has to be advances. It's the role of the government to protect them, to protect the land, to protect the forest, and there has to be some changes there at that level as well. Almir has a lot of talks a lot with the government at a direct level with various ministers. He also goes around the world. Some of these leaders come to Europe, go to America, and I cannot stress enough the need that they have to be heard. We say we give a voice to the forest, even here. In the beginning of this year, Chief Almir was in France, where he could talk to the and Belgium, where he could talk to the European community, where he could talk to the French government, high officials, and this is also part that's very important for these people, and where they and we need help to support, so that to give them a voice. We say giving this voice to the forest, it's extremely efficient in the terms of the changing the consciousness. This is, I think, one of my points of optimism. I've seen a big change since the 2000, when we started off. The society, the Occidental society as such, I believe, is much more conscious and is reacting much more.
And I see we have Almir back on the line, and so I will take this opportunity to go to him and ask if what is it that gives him hope and optimism about looking forward from today.
Então, nosso otimismo vem através de uma ação de parceria que nós tentamos buscar, né? Porque sabemos que ninguém não faz nada sozinho. Então, parcerias são muito importantes nesse processo de valorizar a floresta, valorizar a cultura, e a partir desse parceria também pode levar o conhecimento da sustentabilidade para o mundo. E também, parceria também discute mudanças climáticas, como que a gente pode buscar soluções para isso. E uma dessas soluções é reflorestamento, né? A gente respeitar a floresta, plantar floresta, né? E para mim, o otimismo é essa. Cada vez mais a gente precisa plantar floresta para que eles continuem produzindo, para manter esse milhão de pessoas que vivem no mundo. É isso.
Wonderful. Well, so I see we've reached time. We're so grateful to Chief Almir for joining us today, and for our other panelists, Victor and Tomas, thank you so much. And for everyone who stuck with us through an hour and a half, and the rainforest weather and all of our technical difficulties, we appreciate you also. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day.